For more than 50 years, the Endangered Species Act has helped protect nearly 1,700 plants and animals, including the bald eagle. But the act, signed into law by Richard Nixon, is expected to get a major overhaul with a proposed rule change by the Trump administration. To evaluate the impact, we are joined by Andrew Wetzler, a senior vice president at the Natural Resources Defense Council. Andrew, the Trump administration tried this before in the first term. How is this effort different?
It's just more relentless. It's more, as we've seen with this administration, more widespread. It's following a flooding the zone strategy. So when it comes to the Endangered Species Act, one of America's most successful and popular environmental laws, we're seeing a full-out assault. Everything from trying to change the definition of harm under the act to exclude habitat alteration. That is, you can kill an endangered species by cutting down a tree it nests on, and it won't count under the act, to asking the Department of Interior to review the critical habitat designations of over 900 species with, make no mistake, an eye towards eliminating or shrinking them, to actually calling for every regulation issued under the Endangered Species Act to be sunset within 2 years.
Well, this is also a question that's been asked across the Trump administration. Can the administration do that?
And the short answer is no. You're right. Across the administration, the Trump administration is taking actions which are just manifestly not allowed under the law. There's a separation of powers in this country. Congress has passed laws that set forth what environmental protections we have. And it's the job of the president to enforce those laws, not unilaterally change them. And that's exactly what this administration is trying to do.
And then I suspect we are headed then to a court fight in which, if it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, as these separation of powers fights go, it will then be up to the Supreme Court to decide whether it wants to meddle in what it might call an agency question.
Well, we don't know if this will go all the way up to the Supreme Court. In general, courts have been very strong in defending the Endangered Species Act in the past, but it's certainly possible. One thing is without doubt, which is that NRDC and other environmental groups are going to fight this every step in the way, not just in the court, but in Congress, that needs to reassert its role in defending America's wildlife, and in front of the agencies, which still have to go through a basic administrative process to make any of these changes that they're contemplating.
And so what are the backstops in terms of pushing back here? So it's both the laws, but explain that agency piece.
So the president can't just, as much as he might want to, sign a piece of paper and change the law. In order to change a regulation under a law passed by Congress, you actually have to follow a procedure. The agency has to propose its change. It needs to accept public comment on that change, and then it has to respond to that public comment in a meaningful and a reasoned way. And if it doesn't do any of those things, what it's doing isn't valid and will be held illegal. And that takes time and thought and effort. And we're not seeing a lot of thought, at least from this administration right now.